Okay.
Yep, on you go, Convener.
Welcome to the Audit Committee, the first one in the new year, and I wish everybody a good new year, and I hope it's a better year for everybody, and hope your family's all safe and well. And there's two things I'll say before it, and one just when Alan spoke there, it's about the YouTube. The guidance does not affect existing restrictions in a council standing orders of recording, photographing or filming or proceeding by any person other than the council. So we've got to be on our good behaviour and make sure we address everybody properly and everyone else. So I hope that is for us and you use the chat line. Another one is from Alan Puckering, where we'd like a special meeting of audit on the 8th of the 2nd this year at 3 o'clock, and it's to review proposed changes to the financial registrations and standing orders from the contracts prior to the full council. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, quite happy with that, Alan. Right, then we can head into agenda item number 2. Okay. So Andy, would you like to
Sorry,
go ahead?
Convener, have we still to do apologies, substitutions and declarations of interest?
Oh, sorry. I should have said that first. Okay. Have we got any apologies, substitutions and declaration of interest?
No apologies for absence have been intimated. Are there any declarations of interest?
No. No. Okay, Andy.
Thanks, Chair. So item 2 is the regular internal audit progress report. This report details progress against the audit plan since the last audit committee meeting in October. There was one audit report finalised in relation to insurance arrangements. The overall control environment opinion was satisfactory. There was one amber issue identified, and that was in relation to applying the council's records retention policy. And that was in relation to information held on the Fig Tree Management Information System. The audit identified 3 issues, one of which we consider to be individually significant, and an action plan is in place to address all issues by January 2022. In relation to corporate fraud teamwork, they're nearing completion in relation to the National Fraud Initiative exercise for 2020, and it's anticipated that Audit Scotland will provide an update on progress made on the National Fraud Initiative as part of their spring bulletin. Information on the exercise for Inverclyde Council is set out at section 4.1 of the report. They're also undertaking some quarterly reviews. However, due to the current restrictions, we haven't been able to restart the quarterly reviews of employee expenses or client money accounts, but we're hopeful that we'll get those resumed as soon as we possibly can. Early work carried out in the earlier part of the year hasn't highlighted any significant concerns in either of these areas. Also, Chair, just to advise in relation to the audit of residential care within children's services, we've had a few delays finalising some audit work from last year, the audit plan, so it's likely that this audit will be carried forward to the next year's audit plan. We are starting to do the planning for the audit, but it's likely that that will actually the field work for that will be carried out in the early part of next financial year. In relation to internal audit follow-up, there was one action due for completion by the 30th of November, which missed the deadline set by management. A revised date has now been set. This action relates to the development of data sharing protocols and a data retention policy for the Refugee Integration Scheme audit. Internal audit will follow up on the action in accordance with the revised date that's been set and report a further progress update to the next audit committee meeting in February. A further update has also been provided in relation to 2 actions for education services. These were in relation to information governance. The update is set out at section 4 of the follow-up report, which is appendix 2, and revised dates for implementation have been set for those also. Happy to take any questions on the report. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, Stephen, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. A couple of questions. The first one is in relation to the insurance audit and the amber recommendation. and it's just to sort of get sort of assurance that actually the recommendation can be implemented, that i.e. that the software system that's getting used can be amended. And the second question relates, I suppose, and I'm mindful that we are in the public domain, relates to sort of ad hoc fraud investigations. Members will be aware there was obviously public coverage of an issue recently, which we were told was being investigated as a potential fraud, and there has obviously been a public statement to the effect that no fraud was detected, but there is no mention of that particular issue in the report. So I'm just wondering if that maybe falls into the next audit period or what.
Through you, Chair. So in relation to the insurance audit, the team responsible for the insurance process, they're liaising with the software provider to establish the best way to apply the data retention policy, and work is ongoing at the moment, and the auditor responsible has a meeting with the team leader for the area, so we will keep a watching brief on this particular action point. It's just a little bit more difficult because the data is stored in different partitioned areas of the actual database itself, so it's not as straightforward. With a hard copy file, you could just lift it and destroy it. With an electronic system, there's a little bit more steps involved, but the work is ongoing with the software provider. In relation to the second point about the fraud matter, as this is a public report, the cases are anonymised. And in relation to the particular case, that hasn't been, it is included within this report, but it is actually part of the anonymised information. Where there was any significant fraud identified, that would be included within the Audit Committee agenda, but it would be taken as a private paper, just given the nature of the matter that was being investigated. Hope that answers your question there, Councillor. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. Thanks very much.
Quite happy. Okay. Provost.
Thanks very much, Channel. I was going to ask Andy, it was just for clarity, on page 7, Appendix 1 and 1.1, it says that in each audit, one of 4 overall opinions is expressed. Can you explain that? I mean, where are the other 3? Yeah.
Through you, Chair. So when we carry out an audit assignment, the basis that the reason we're carrying that out is to provide an assurance to Audit Committee. And the way we do it in Inverclyde is we give each audit assignment 4 gradings. So where there are no major concerns or maybe minor improvements, the audit area would have a strong control environment opinion. Where there were some amber issues or isolated weaknesses, it would have an overall satisfactory control environment opinion. We're trying to comply with the public sector internal audit standards, whereby Audit Committee are being made aware of the control environment opinion for every area that we audit, and that rolls up into the annual report, Provost, that will come to the substantive committee after summer recess. There will be a full report, and what the individual audit assignment opinions, they basically inform the overall environment opinion from internal audit for the council. So hopefully that explains it for you.
Oh, thank you. That's fine, Andy. Thank you.
Okay. Tommy.
Yeah,
Councillor
thanks,
Kay.
Katina. Andy, page 21, section 4, regarding missed deadlines. This particular item is now on its 5th deadline. So at what point does that become a concern for you as a Chief Auditor?
Through you, Chair. So we do the annual report to Audit Committee, and what we monitor through that is progress against audit actions. where there are significant issues, for example, red or amber issues, and there's been difficulties in getting the action implemented, that feeds into the review of the local code of governance as an improvement action. You'll remember to education actions, they actually now form part of the annual governance statement. So we are starting to report, significant governance issues that come out of an audit. We're starting to report that through the annual governance statement process. So as part of the annual governance statement for 21-22, we will review the completion status of audit actions and where it's felt that needs to be reported through the annual governance statement. That will come back as a report through the audit committee. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Well, I've looked back at the various deadlines, and the narrative provided is fairly similar throughout the previous meetings, which this has came to. Now, are we going to hit the 31st of the 3rd, 22?
Through you, Chair, from speaking with the relevant head of service, this is also tabled regularly at CMT, and the heads of service that are involved in this are confident that the deadlines will be achieved the 31st of March. Sufficient capacity has been identified to get the particular actions closed.
Yeah, okay. And I was going to ask you what's your next step if we don't meet the deadline, but we'll maybe leave that for the following meeting. But thanks for that, Andy.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brooks.
Thanks very much, Convener. Councillor McCabe has obviously introduced the subject that I was going to ask a question to. So big page 12, I am 4.4, it's headed whistleblower and other references. The file reference, I think, for audit is 21-153. Now, this was in the public domain, it is in the public domain, and the information from the Chief Executive was that the report was going to come to audit. So when I opened the papers, to find 15 words, when the public, the local press, in fact, even the national press were looking for answers, and to find 15 words on a report, I would suggest is not the value that the public, or even myself, was looking for. I can't talk for other members of the Audit Committee. And I would just wonder, Convener, could we request a more detailed report, and may have to be in private session, because 15 words for what was a potential major issue, for us to understand how the report came to its conclusion, I think would be due diligence for Inverclyde Council's Audit Committee.
Thank you. It's Alan or Andy or me? Right,
Well,
Alan.
happy for the professionals.
Yeah, I'm happy to kick matters off. I mean, the point that Andy's already made is that the council receives a number of whistleblowing, but reports on those where there are issues that come out that are substantive, and they're the issues that are reported. Where there is an issue that is raised that the matter investigated is not found to be a matter that's fraudulent, then it's not reported. Otherwise, the elected members would receive, and we wouldn't have the staff resources to pull together report after report after report about matters that are not fraudulent. So that's why what's in here, when you look at what else is on that page regarding the hundreds of cases that are viewed in terms of council tax, benefit, blue badge, other whistleblowing, this was one case. Yes, it appeared in the national press. Yes, it was investigated by Andy and a team, and also checked with the Scottish Government, and there was no evidence of any fraud. And so as a result, that's why the matter has been dealt with the way that it's been dealt with. I understand, I can appreciate it was a political issue with a capital P at the time, which officers, myself, were challenged, chastised, whichever way you want to look at it, in the press. But that is, that doesn't make it a fraud issue. And Andy's team have investigated it. So So from my perspective, Andy has treated this entirely appropriately in her update, because there was no evidence of any fraud through the investigation that her team independently carried out.
Convener, I fully understand that we couldn't go into the volume of reports where there was no fraud carried out, but I would like to propose to you, Convener, that this is a special or an unusual allegation that was made. And obviously, our chief financial officer has just advised us that it was potentially a political, with a capital P, story. So, for many reasons, I would like to have more information on this one. So, I'll take guidance from yourself, Convener. I would like a report to the next meeting for us to understand why this wasn't a fraudulent case. I'm not questioning Andy's integrity. I just think, for due diligence, the Audit Committee should see the homework of why this is not fraudulent.
Well, as somebody who's actually put in for some of these benefits, you fit criteria and they check and you know exactly what it is, what you're getting. In fact, the one that's going to come out very shortly maybe upset me a wee little bit, because people are not in the criteria right now, but will come in under the one that's coming out shortly for this time to help them. And there's other places, so you'll start to look, and that's going to have an effect on Andy, Alan, and us as well, because it opens a door that I think's wrong, and I don't think it meets the criteria. But this is a new criteria that's coming out. So yes, I will have words with Alan and Andy, and we'll see what we can do to alleviate your problem and give you more information without divulging anything that shouldn't be using the paper. Because right now it could be stuff, and I'd have to seek legal advice on that. What would happen if stuff got to the paper that we shouldn't disclose under data protection? And that's my big worry. But when I read the stuff that you read, I certainly was wondering how it worked. But anyway, it's all in the small print that you don't see. It causes half the bother, and I can assure you that from personal experience. Okay, but I will find out other stuff. Okay. Well,
Convener, if required, I'm happy to make a motion if other members wish to either support me or vote against me.
No, it's okay. We'll try and time it. Okay, quite happy then.
If we're going to have a future report, I'm very happy. Thank you.
Okay, right, Chris, Curley, Councillor.
Thank you, Convener. Going back to what they call duty for scrutiny here, looking at what they call 2.6, which is in relation to the data retention policy. I'm presuming that that's a data retention policy which brings in the GDPR regulations, and I'm just wondering whether or not there's a case of if there's been consideration done for having a horizontal audit to see what other aspects of our computer systems maybe don't meet the requirements for GDPR. I just wonder if officers have undertaken that or are considering that in the future.
Right, Andy.
Through you, Chair, we carried out a review of the GDPR legislation before it came into force. We carried out, it was called a GDPR readiness audit, and I was fortunate enough to sit on the Information Governance Working Group for almost a decade, which provided relevant audit guidance and support to the actual working group. So in terms of records management, there's been a significant amount of work done for both hard copy and electronic records to align the two systems to make sure that we're destroying records on an electronic system in the same way as we would for a hard copy system. So there were various action plans raised through audits. So every time we carry out an audit, we look at non-mainframe systems, we look at the type of information that's been held, and where there is personal information or there is a records retention requirement, we would include that as part of the scope for that audit. So there has been, just to to finalise. There has been a wider review of GDPR readiness across the council, and for every audit that we carry out where there is information retained on a system, we will look at compliance with Data Protection Act and also compliance with the council's records retention policy, whether that's hard copy or electronic records. Hopefully that answers your query, councillor.
Okay.
Thank you. It does make sense. So basically, we did the readiness. Are we seeing a trend when we're doing the audits? Are we picking up? Is it a scattering, or is there a trend that maybe we do need to look at this again with respect to GDPR? Because I'm obviously conscious of the fact that if there's data there, these things can get into the wrong hands, and it can obviously cause significant issues for people. So I'm just wondering, are we seeing that there's a trend here when we're picking these things up in the audit, or is it just a sporadic, what do you call it, a sporadic non-compliance that's coming through, or do you think there's a trend?
Through you, Chair, I can't give that sort of understanding in terms of all the systems that we have, but we have what's called an information asset register, and we have owners for the information assets, and the various systems that we look at from an audit perspective are the key systems which council services operate. We do also get involved in new systems that are being implemented. So for example, there's a Swift replacement system. So as part of this year's audit plan, we're sitting on the programme board for that, and one of the areas that we're making sure we are compliant with is data protection regulations and obviously the wider GDPR regulations, but having it as part of a regular audit will also pick up on the key systems. We don't look at every system that's held within the council, but that's what the information asset register is for, and there's an information governance team that coordinates an annual exercise with services to confirm that they are compliant with all the aspects of GDPR. It's a spreadsheet that's retained by the information governance team, and as part of that annual exercise, they confirm that the data has been held in accordance with the relevant legislation. Hopefully that helps answer your query there, councillor.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Puckering,
Thank you, and it's timed well the order that the questions came out, because it was my response, please, was in line with the question that Councillor McCabe asked, and then it's sort of been followed up by Councillor Curley. So it is about, there is a massive amount of work to be done in terms of document retention, whether it is physical copy or whether it is electronic copy. GDPR is one aspect of it, but the council has had a document retention policy for decades, and it is an ongoing painting the fourth rail bridge exercise to ensure that you are only retaining documents that you should be, particularly as things like rules change, and quite often that is put to the test when you are looking for information or you've been asked for information that you should or shouldn't have. And so Andy is quite right, as part of the ongoing system audits, when she's looking at processes, one of the many checks, as well as looking at processes and procedures, will be looking at how up to date and whether you do have processes and procedures for disposal of electronic documents or physical documents. So the point that Councillor Curley has made is exactly correct, that it should be an issue. It's a corporate issue across the council, whether it's social work systems, payroll systems, HR systems, education systems, to ensure that the council is only retaining the documentation that it should have, and that work is overseen by the information governance group, and is viewed as part of the annual governance statement. So at the moment, we're doing it on a case-by-case basis with an overall annual overview of it, but it is a significant issue, and I wouldn't want members to underestimate how big a task it would be to ensure that everything was 100% up to date.
Thanks, Alan. Stephen, are you quite happy? And Chris, with Alan's?
Yeah, thanks for the additional response.
That's Rob. Natasha, Councillor Murphy.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, my question was just about, I think it's page 23 of our papers, section 5, just looking at the number of internal actions agreed. I was just wondering, the past 2 years the numbers have dipped significantly. I can appreciate that maybe this is due to COVID pressures, but I just wanted to check, is that the case? We were locked down for a significant portion of 2020 and 2021. From June till December, we weren't really locked down to the same extent as the previous year, but there were still restrictions on working and things like that. So just wanted to kind of get an overview of whether it was planned that this number of actions would decrease or whether it was a direct result of the pandemic.
Go ahead, Andy.
Thanks, through you, Chair. So in terms of the audit actions, the audit plan is risk-based, and a lot of the reports for 2021 annual report had been carried out in previous years. So what we were finding last year was a lot of satisfactory control environment opinions and some strong control environment opinions, which therefore leads to less audit issues being identified. So as we go through you know, the cycle of the audit process, and we do the sort of strategic risk assessment, there's new things that will come up and they'll get added on to the audit universe. You know, historically we've had some of the earlier years audit plans have a significantly higher number of audit actions, but that may be because that's the first time the area has been audited. We're now into a cycle of repeating some of the audits, so we would expect to see improved control environments, which is therefore resulting in less audit actions. So hopefully that answers your query, Councillor.
Yes, it does. It makes complete sense. It's because we've done that groundwork before, because we've carried out those audits before. It basically means our environments are more secure and better suited, meaning that less actions come out of it. That's really helpful to know. Thank you.
Okay, right. Councillor Jim McElhaney.
Thanks, Convener. It's going back to Councillor Brooks's request for a private report on that particular issue. If it was a member of the public that's instigated this review into why that was paid or not, then I would fully expect that member of the public, the anonymity, to be protected and maintained, of course. If it has been an elected member that has instigated that review, then I would expect any report, subsequent report, to name that elected member, the reasons why the initial payment was made, because it met the criteria, and then the subsequent inquiry afterwards, and then the process as to why it was deemed it didn't meet the criteria. So I'd expect that to be captured in any report as well. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Right, anybody else? And everybody quite happy then? Okay, agreed. Sorry.
So, excuse me, Convener, can we just clarify then what the committee's additional instruction is regarding the additional report?
Well, I think we'll have to go in and see what we can disclose and what we might not be able to disclose. And there should be a report back that satisfies the committee. As I said, the reason I said that is data protection might stop us even putting a councillor's name down. So that'll be checked out and that'll save any bother. Okay, but I think we should have the relevant information. I can only tell you how I've had dealings, and sometimes interpretation between one council to another makes a big difference. And then it gets sorted out because of, and even today we are still got double meanings and double standards, because some you can do and some you can't do. Some you can ask and some you can't. So that's just, I think it's happened. It's just the interpretation at certain times, but we'll get it sorted out so at least we know exactly what should happen and shouldn't happen as far as our council is concerned.
So can I clarify, do we have consensus in the committee on that, or is that a matter we're looking to vote on?
Well, I agree, they're quite happy with that, what I've said. Okay. Well,
can I come in?
Yep.
I'm not sure if there's a member of the press here today, right?
Yeah.
But Jim has implied that potentially the investigation that was launched was initiated by an elected member, right? Now, I have no knowledge of any elected member initiating that inquiry, so I would just seek clarification from Mr. Puckrin as to whether it was an elected member that initiated the complaint that led to the investigation.
Stephen, that's why I said it might be that we can't even disclose who it was, if it was.
Yeah, but Chair, we're in a public forum, and one elected member has put into the thought processes here, potentially it could have been an elected member. And if a member of the press had been present at this meeting, I suspect that may well have been a story in a hare that was let loose. So I think we should seek to address that specific point at this time. Okay. Alan, do you want to come in on this?
Yeah, on the basis of my memory, a member of the public sent an inquiry to me regarding a grant payment. I responded to that member of the public, and then the next day it appeared in the national press with me being quoted. That then resulted, because of concerns that were being raised locally regarding that Andy and her team were asked to investigate by the chief executive to see whether there'd been a fraud. At the same time, I spoke to the Scottish Government officials who confirmed that the grant was appropriate. And Andy concluded her investigation, the result, whistleblowing investigation, the result of which has been confirmed to the committee today, that there was no fraud. I'll work with Andy in putting something in private to the next meeting. I would suggest it's an appendix to the report, the similar report that you've just been discussing here. But I suppose I'm just trying to get my head around an operational decision following government guidance. You know, I can understand that individual elected members may have a political view, may have a view on it, but that doesn't. I'm just trying to think ultimately where this gets to in terms of officers. I suppose that's my question, because we have taken a decision. It's been confirmed by the government officials that it's in line with the guidance. So I'm not sure what else we can really add. And you've got the chief internal auditor saying there's nothing. You can understand that officers are concerned about getting dragged into a political matter.
Alan, thanks for that. I'll say it again. That's why I said the interpretation and what's come out from the Scottish office and the way our people, you've actually got to go back at times and try to get an answer. And it also depends who you get there, whether you get what you think's right or wrong. But if they give you that, we have no other option but to implement it. And that's one of the annoying things. So I think that's right. Jim, try to come back in.
Yeah, thanks, convener. First of all, pick up Stephen's point. I did not say it was an elected member. I said if it was an elected member. There's a big word there, if. Moving on from that, if the money was paid in accordance with the Scottish Government criteria, why and then was it paid, has to be paid, or the press statement was that the £10,000 was paid back? I'm just curious as to why that happened.
Alan?
Yeah. The organisation offered to pay the money back. The council did not approach them, ask for the money back or anything like that. The organisation, you know, you'd need to ask them that, and they have offered to pay that money back to the council. So the advice we should be going back to that organisation is, no, you met the criteria, you don't need to pay it back, surely. Not take money for the sake of taking money. The council has received the money back, as many councils have, from a number of organisations that received business grants over the COVID period. There was great publicity, you might remember, when Tesco repaid money and other supermarkets repaid money, because the context of the grant was it was meant to help organisations and businesses that needed money. It wasn't just everyone was entitled to it. And it was down to individual organisations, and I certainly know that we have received money back from a small number of organisations who initially claimed the money and then decided that they didn't need the money, and they paid it back, and obviously the councils then paid it back to the Scottish Government. So this organisation falls into that category, but I just want to confirm the council did not approach the organisation and ask for the money back. That came back voluntarily from the organisation.
Thank you, Alan. Stephen?
Yeah, I just want to respond to Jim's point. I'm quite clear. I know Jim said if, but I was just trying to stop the hares running, Jim, by getting clarity that it wasn't an elected member who made the original complaint. And I'm happy to accept the assurance from officers that there was no fraud in this particular case. But I also believe fundamentally it was wrong for the organisation to claim the money in the first place, and they've done the right thing by offering to pay it back. I'm not sure whether it's actually been paid back yet or not. And there may be one or two elected members on this particular call who have links to that organisation who might want to think whether they've got a conflict of interest that they would maybe want to declare.
Okay. Anyway, we're quite happy with what Alan said he'll do and bring a report back. Quite happy about that.
Great.
Agreed. Thanks, Alan. Thanks, Andy. Okay. Agenda item number 3.
Thanks, Chair. So this is the normal follow-up report in relation to external audit actions. So there were no actions due for completion by the 30th of November, and there are 6 current actions being progressed by officers. These relate to recommendations made by the external auditors as part of their annual audit report for 2020 to 2021. It's a straightforward report, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you.
Point of order, please, Chair. I think it's impossible for people to declare an interest on something that is not actually noted within the report. I think if there's anything that comes into any subsequent report, then it's up to elected members at that point to declare an interest. At this point in time, we're talking about a report. We spent a lot of time discussing about a known unknown. So I think what you call it, the appropriate time for any declaration of interest or anything else like that is if there's a subsequent report which identifies the organisations and the people involved.
Peter, you want to give a legal advice on it, or do you want me to give my opinion on it?
So, if it's not a matter that's disclosed explicitly in the body of the report, then you wouldn't need to declare your interest on it in this instance. But if it was a specific, because this report's talking in general terms, if it was a specific report on a specific incident where there would be a potential declaration of interest, then yes, you would need to declare it at that point.
Councillor McCabe.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. As always, I was simply trying to be helpful to elected members and offer them some benefit of my many years of service on the council. But as always, it is for elected members to decide whether they wish to declare an interest or not. To me, we all know what organisation we're talking about. There is a specific reference to this matter in the report. And we've strayed into further discussion around that organisation, and we all know what organisation we're talking about. And I don't know what connections any elected member has to this particular organisation, but I can only surmise there may well be some elected members who have a particular link to the organisation who might wish to think about it, whether it's today or another time, declaring an interest.
You're quite happy with that, Chris?
I'm always welcome the benefit of Stephen's many years of experience in the council, but I note the advice given by the legal office of the council. Thank you.
Okay, right, then we can move on to agenda item number 3 then. Andy.
Apologies, Chair. I just gave a brief introduction to the report, but I'm happy to just clarify that this is in relation to external audit follow-up. There were no actions due for completion by the 30th of November. There are 6 current actions being progressed by officers relating to recommendations made by the external auditor as part of their annual audit report for 2021. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Stephen.
That's the previous item, Chana. It was the matter Chris that raised.
There's one agenda item number 3 and your name below it, but never mind, don't worry. Okay, so there are no questions anyway. We agree.
Agreed.
Right, so it's agenda item number 4.
Thanks, Chair. So this report sets out the proposed approach for risk monitoring and reporting of key service, project and corporate risks, and it's for consideration and approval today by the Audit Committee. The proposed approach is set out at Appendix 1, and what it shows there is the alignment of the process to the Council's strategic planning and performance management framework. Once approved, the revised approach will be updated within the risk management strategy, and there'll also be an opportunity to review other aspects of risk management, such as risk appetite and risk scoring methodology. It's intended that a further report will be presented to a later Audit Committee meeting, setting out progress to date in implementing the new progress and any further action being undertaken. Apologies, Chair, the recommendation states that a further report will be brought to the May Audit Committee. However, due to the elections, the report will now be brought to the first standing Audit Committee meeting after May 2022, if the recommendation could be updated to reflect that. Thank you, Chair.
No problem. Everybody quite happy with the proposal?
There's 3 questions.
Sorry, item 4. Lynn, Councillor Quinn.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just a few questions. I'd noticed under 4.6 that the corporate risk register was last formally reviewed in 2017. So clearly we're almost 5 years since that's been reviewed. So I welcome the fact that we are putting a new strategy in and it's going to be implemented soon. So just a couple of questions I've got is, when will our new corporate risk register be fully up to date and operational? And how often will that be reviewed? Hopefully less than every 5 years. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Chair. So the report obviously went to the corporate management team ahead of coming to Audit Committee, and there's a clear line of responsibility within the diagram. I've tried to set the sort of timeline out at the right hand side as well, that we're expecting heads of service to review either their service risk register, a project risk register, or any additional risk registers for strategies and plans. We're hoping that heads of service will do that on a quarterly basis, which will then feed into the directorate meetings that the heads of service attend, and then 6 monthly corporate management team are looking to review and update the corporate risk register, but that will be based on the reviews that have been undertaken by the heads of service and the directorate management teams. And that's really to make sure that the corporate risk register captures any sort of operational risks that possibly are now starting to aggregate across different services. An issue that I could raise would maybe be around capacity, which in a number of service areas has been, is raised as a risk, and maybe, capacity needs to then start to feed up through the directorate process and then into the corporate management team process. So yes, there's a clear structure going forward in terms of the timing of these reviews, and it's anticipated that risk register will now start to be formally reported to the relevant service and scrutiny committees. Hopefully that answers your question.
Okay. Okay, quite happy.
Great,
Steve?
yeah, thank you.
Councillor McCabe, you again.
I think it's Councillor Brooks before me.
Sorry, I've got it.
Councillor Becky.
Right, I can see it better.
Thank you very much, Councillor McCabe. Yeah, Convener, it was just to ask, we have also a number of joint services now with Western Barton, and is there any way that we'd have to explicitly look at them differently from an audit point of view? Because obviously the management would be slightly different. I just wonder if audit is happy that it's picked up on service committees appropriately, that there's nothing that can fall between the stools because it's joint working.
Through you, Chair, as part of the risk management process, partnership risk is a category that services look at when they're reviewing their service risk registers or their project risk registers, because we develop a lot of projects in partnership with other organisations. So that's an area of partnership risk that would be covered either through the actual service risk register itself, or the project risk register, or indeed any strategies or plans that are done in conjunction with other organisations. Hopefully that answers your question. Thank you.
It does partly, but so because governance is a big part of the committees and structure, so you're happy that governance is picked up within those structures that you suggested?
Through you, Chair. So in terms of risk management, that's the governance structure for reporting on risk registers. There is a separate joint shared service committee which deals with other matters relating to the shared service for West Bartonshire and Inverclyde Council. And if there's any other matters of governance, they would get reported through the relevant service committee.
Okay, lovely. Thanks, Convener. Thank you.
Okay, Stephen. Councillor McCabe.
Thanks, Chair. Just asking in respect of paragraph 4.2, which refers to the code of practice from Audit Scotland, just to get an understanding, I suppose, of how we keep up to date with good practice in terms of risk management and ensure that we're complying with that sort of good practice, and what sort of role do Audit Scotland play, I suppose, in looking at how we approach risk management?
Okay, go ahead, Andy.
Thanks, Chair. So as part of our annual governance statement, I undertake a review of the Council's position against the sort of best value toolkit that Audit Scotland's promulgate in relation to risk management. And in terms of the external auditors themselves, as part of their annual audit, they look at wider dimensions, which include risk management, and they regularly seek assurances in terms of the risk management process, and they regularly have dialogue with myself in terms of the process that we operate within the council.
So just to follow that up, Convener, so are they generally satisfied with our approach to risk management? But as always, we can always improve. So I'm presuming this process we're talking about is how we maybe move to the next level and improve what we do.
Yep. Through you, Chair. So there's three sort of practice guidance, if you like. So we have basic practice, we have better practice, and we have advanced practice. So what we're trying to do today is move the council forward in its risk management process to make sure that we're aligning risk management to the relevant committees, and we're getting that transparency of reporting on risk. So hopefully that answers your query.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you. Provost Martin.
Thanks, Channel. Thank you. Andy, it's actually going back to your response to Lynn on 4.6. It's my understanding now that what you do is you have a formal review every few years, but that is not set in stone. That on a quarterly basis, that may be adjusted, although it's not, and that's done informally rather than formally. Is that correct?
Through you, Chair. So on a formal basis, services do review their risk registers at least 6 monthly, and that's confirmed through the annual governance statement process that I facilitate on behalf of the Section 95 officer. That's a remit that's been delegated to myself to do. So I regularly meet with heads of service, understand their risk registers, and I'm regularly consulted from heads of service to help them facilitate and develop new risk registers in relation to key projects or key plans and strategies. That's an embedded process within the council. What we're trying to do is strengthen the reporting process to go through DMTs and go through corporate management team and then go to relevant committees for information. That's really what the paper we presented today is looking to formalise. So we're looking for that approval of that new process. Thank you.
And I just want to know, are any amendments incorporated in the risk register?
Through you, Chair, sorry, but Provost, could you just clarify that question for me, please?
You know, you're talking about this is real nitpicking, but when you do the 6-monthly review, if you devise a better option or a better way of addressing problems, is that incorporated into the risk register, the corporate risk register?
Apologies, through you, Chair. Yes, part of the risk management process where we identify a risk, additional mitigations are decided upon, but they will be regularly reviewed and updated just to make sure that they're still fit for purpose, or whether we need to undertake any different mitigations. But that will come through the reports that will start to come up through CMT and into the relevant service committees.
Well, that's great. It's much clearer in my head now. Nothing to do with your response, Andy. Just to do with my head, you know.
No problem.
Quite happy then, Provost?
Yes, Channel.
Okay, everybody agree to recommendations?
Great.
Agreed.
Can I say something before we disappear? Because quite a lot of people and are talking about audit. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think there's a big difference. Stephen's right. We've got to try to keep improving, because we were way back in the dark ages and it was awful. I mean, awful. And luckily enough, we've got a team now, and Andy and our team do well. Matt Thompson and of course Alan Puckrin, and the two backup girls that do all the stuff with the committee stuff. I think it works together, and their discussions, and they talk freely. But just to improve information to the councillors, and I've seen a big difference in it, and I hope it keeps going that way, and I hope whoever's re-elected in May can work with them, because everyone is in the committee, whether it's your political party or somebody else's, we work as a team. And I can only say thanks to every one of you, and please keep going that way I keep saying it for Inverclyde, for yourself and everyone else. And I hope every one of you again have a better year this year than last year. And thanks for all the time in the committee.